Good morning. This is the July 18, 2024 meeting of the Syracuse Board of Review. This hearing is being held via video conference call at the following location: Hughes State Office Building, Main Hearing Room, first floor, 333 East Washington Street, Syracuse, New York, 13202. The time now is 9:33, and this hearing is officially open. The members of the board are to my far left, Gail Swistak, to my left, Andrew Garlock, to my right, Jeffrey Hinderleiter. My name is C. Thomas Parsons, Chairman. From the Department of State, we have Mr. Thomas DiTullio and Hendrik Schenk. We will now hear the scheduled petitions. When you speak, please address the board and give your name, title, and legal address so that our court reporter can have all the information requested. We may have to stop from time to time to consult with our technical staff. In making comments to the board, please provide a descriptive narrative on the matters referring to your exhibits to enable the court reporter to enter these into the record. We will now hear our first petitions. The first hearing is in petition number 2024-0279. This hearing is in the matter of 20 Portsmouth LLC. Change screens here.
And Barbara's out.
Okay.
And
the petitioner is Amanda and Christopher Costanza. And the company is 20 Portsmouth LLC. This in regards to a property at 12 to 16 South Main Street, Prattsburg, New York, County of Steuben, State of New York. And the variance that is being requested is from the existing building code 805.3.1.12, C, sprinklers, specifying sprinklers in the occupancy below a residential occupancy, an existing building code 701.2 septic system, looking for an exemption to be able to use the existing septic system until a municipal system is installed. Okay. Do we have the applicant that's going to speak for them?
Yes.
Come on forward and state your name and your address.
My name is Chris Costanza.
Hold on, we just want to make sure we get this.
How to get you in?
Get you in the view.
There we go.
There we are. Go ahead.
My name is Chris Costanza. And these buildings are buildings.
Oh, just state your address, yes.
314 Hollywood Avenue, Rochester, New York, 14618.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
So these buildings that we're asking for is they were existing buildings in a small town in upstate New York, Prattsburg, New York. And we bought the buildings, 12 to 14 Main Street was occupied with 3 apartments and a restaurant below. 16 Main Street was vacant. It previously had 2 apartments up above and a retail space below. We wrote a grant for the properties to kind of fix them up. We wanted to basically fix them, get them back on the tax rolls and occupied with newer finishes, more energy efficient. We went through the process of going to get state historic status and federal historic status for the buildings. And we started to do the work. We were issued a permit from the town. We got about 2/3 way through the project, and then the town got a new building code inspector for a permit, so that we were efficient on documentation and features for the building safety features, whatnot. So we have gone through over the past 10 months or 11 months now, gone through various code reviews with different third-party code reviewers to come to the point now where, from our perspective, we looked at it as kind of a somewhat simple project where we had these small buildings, small brick row buildings that we wanted to fix up, basically new finishes, fixtures, new energy efficient, furnaces and HVAC systems. And we feel like the town code officer is now wanting us to come with, as if it was a brand new building. So, we don't look as, being that the building that originally did not have sprinkler systems, that there's very little infrastructure to put sprinklers. Building like the water services are pretty minimal. These are 1850, 1860 buildings. We want to be able to fix them up, and we've done many different safety features in order to make the buildings safer than what they were. The buildings, when they were occupied, when we bought them, had a lot of penetrations that were open between commercial spaces and residential spaces. There was no insulation in the buildings up in the ceiling. So we needed to like very inexpensive apartments with utility bills. The rent ones. There was a lot of electrical issues with poor electrical wiring and, kind of hot knobbed mechanical systems. And in one building, there was a mechanical system that went from the upper floor and went through the floor, the downdraft system for an RV that was shifted in the building. So we made all these improvements to the building, all these, safety improvements without sprinklering the entire buildings. So we're trying to finish the project. We have about 4 months of construction left, and we're trying to finish it. We've been kind of on hold for the past 11 months now. And we've gone through numerous revisions of third-party reviews for like a Chapter 13 review to show the code officer that why the town chose a code officer a third-party reviewer that was in Pennsylvania, which then had most of the work done by an intern in Washington, D.C. We chose to have a third-party reviewer from a company that specializes in code review in New York State and was recommended to us by the AIA, Landmark Society. So we have 2 different Chapter 13 reviews. The Chapter 13 review that was done by the town's request did not know that the buildings had historic status. So part of their suggestion of our compliance path is to move an old tin ceiling in the original bar, the original tin ceiling to the building, and we're required to remove that, as well as add secondary egress to parts of the building that again weren't there originally, or reconfigure the space of how the space has been configured for the past 60, 70 years. So the second review that we have, it accommodates all the historic status of the building. It gives us a compliance path, but the town is not willing to accept that compliance path, even though it was done by a licensed architect in New York State.
I think for my purposes, and hopefully for the board's purpose, I want to do a little history on 12 and 14 and 16. Are they separate buildings? 12 and 14 looks like it's a building. Is that a separate building?
Yeah, so originally in 18.
So yes or no question?
Well, they are currently separate tax IDs.
Okay, but are they, from an architectural standpoint, are they separate buildings?
Yes.
12 and 14 and 16 are different. 12 and 14 is obviously one building. Okay.
They are separated by a fire party wall that goes from the foundation.
Okay, just want to make sure we're on the same page. Okay. 10 is not involved in this conversation at all. It's
No, 10.
it's not part of this variance, so we're, okay, so we're not going to talk about 10. On the second floor of 12 and 14, what was it before you did any changes? What was the occupancy?
The occupancy was 3 apartments.
Okay. So the exiting that we show on the drawings hasn't changed. It's still there, right? That's your 10 was.
We've actually improved it, but yes.
Yes, okay. So was there an exit that went down through the bar prior to involved in any of this?
Yeah, one of the apartments had an exit that had a stairwell that down into the bar space.
Did that exist before you did any changes?
Well, that was, I don't know when that was, but that was inoperable or not in use for at least the past 3 or 4 decades.
Okay, okay.
So it was like an 1890 stairwell.
Okay, was it blocked off when you said it
Yeah,
was
so
not in
on,
use?
on the second floor is blocked off with 2x4, four joists over the opening.
Oh, okay.
With runners, I would.
Okay,
It was like kind of a back of someone's apartment.
okay. Thanks. I just want to make sure we got it. Let's go to 16. What was the second floor occupancy?
The last second floor occupancy was 2 apartments. So when we bought the building in 2020, it was vacant, it was gutted space.
Okay, but it had been used for
It was
apartments.
used for apartments, yes.
Okay, first floor, what had been used?
The first floor was previous retail space.
Okay, all right. And the 12 to 14 is a bar, right? You said
A bar.
next door. What's the occupancy of that? Just, do you know?
Well, it was a grocery store in the 1950s or 1940s.
Yeah, what's the occupancy of the bar now? Is it 50 or more than 50?
The occupancy of it, it is more than 50, I think it's like 90 or so, or 88.
Okay.
And it may be better occupancy, but
Do both of these buildings have a basement?
yes,
They're finished or unfinished?
they're unfinished.
Okay, concrete floor or dirt floor?
The bar building, the 12 to 14, has a concrete floor.
Okay.
The ceiling height is less than 7 feet.
Okay.
The 16 Main Street has a dirt floor, ceiling height is about, varies from like 5 to 6 feet or 6 foot.
So it's not a crawl space, it's a basement.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can crawl down there or you can walk down there dunking.
Okay, it's got a set of stairs to go down to it. Okay, I just wanted to get a picture of what this thing is before you did any work. Are you the architect of record when you started this project?
Yes,
Okay, are you still the architect of record or did you bring in
Yes.
another? Okay,
84 is the occupancy for the barn.
okay, all right. Who decided to go down the chapter 13 pathway?
We decided to do that after the new code inspector in the town was asking us to, provide additional information on drawings.
Okay,
So, we were trying to, we got a stop work order after 2 years of getting approvals and historic status and grant and everything else. We started construction, we did construction for about 4 or 5 months, then we got a stop work order. We were trying to quickly, give the information that new code inspector was asking for. We asked multiple times for a completed list of, what was needed, and we would get a partial list, and, the ending being, this is a partial list. And so for the first couple of months, we went through and we did a bunch of things, like we were asked to do a structural report. We had a structural engineer come in, look at the structure of the buildings, do the report. And then we provided that to the town, and then the town asked for a structural analysis. So we went through, and then we did a structural calculations of the existing roof wrapper, 90 and the existing floor frame, masonry walls. Went through, and then there was questions about the fire partitions, the building, the fire partition between the different buildings, because those were, 1860, field stone construction and fire brick, forced brick construction. We had to go through our CAD materials and methods handbook in order to find assemblies that were similar. So we kind of went through a bunch of different historic documents in order to find what's a similar UL listing would be for those walls to prove that they had a fire rating.
Okay.
So we kind of went through that process, and then I think it was at some point last fall, we went, so let's just go through a chapter 13 review. Maybe we can, we can show that it has a minimum level of safety features, and then at that point, we can kind of move forward and get our permit back and complete the project.
Okay.
And then, that basically our chapter 13 review was not accepted by the town. And then we had, 2 other chapter 13 reviews since.
okay. So I'm still trying to figure out how we got to chapter 13. Did you start down, this is like, well, let me ask the question. On 12 and 14, what was the percentage of the work area on each floor?
On the first floor, the work area was maybe 5%. We modified one little wing wall between the waitress area and dining room.
What was the work area on the second floor?
The second floor area was maybe 25% or so. I think we had some of that exact number is not on the drawings. But on the second floor, we reconfigured a bathroom on two of the apartments to make them more functional. So let's see here. So the second floor work area for 12 Main Street was 4%. Let's see, on 14 Main Street, it was also 4%. It was basically we were reconfiguring bathrooms in one bedroom that had a weird closet. We took out the closet wall, made the bedroom bigger. That was kind of the extent of the change in configuration.
So on 12 and 14, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like we're under 50%.
Correct.
Okay. On 16, are we under 50% or over 50%?
On 16, we are on the first floor, we have 7% of the area, and on the second floor, we have 32% of the area that was reconfigured. And the first floor basically consisted of creating or building out a handicap accessible bathroom in a wing wall on the first floor. And the second floor, because it was gutted, we were making new walls for, the apartments.
Okay. See where I'm going with these questions? Okay. Understand where we're going? Okay. We're trying to figure out why you were in chapter 13 in the first place. I'll be honest with you. And somebody, maybe you can explain to me how we got to chapter 13.
The town did not accept our original drawings that did not have that. They basically pulled it and said, you need to have sprinklers, you need to have all this stuff. I'm trying to say, well, just doing.
Sounds like you have an alteration level 2.
Right, exactly. So we've argued with the town over this for 10 months. That's why we're here.
Okay. Mr. Tutuli, am I missing something here?
You might want to talk to the town and find out why you won't accept it.
Well, I'm going.
Because it says you shall accept it, 1301.2. End of story.
Yeah, but I didn't know why they're at 13, why this is not an alteration.
I do believe probably because the architect has gone through an alteration too, and they did accept the alteration too, because maybe they don't understand the code.
Okay, all right.
Well, that's a
See for a
town-
moment, we gotta talk with the code enforcement official.
I think he's here.
Okay, Mr. Scheid, are you the code enforcement official for the town?
Chris Whipple.
Chris Whipple? Okay, I'm sorry, I see. Mr. Whipple, or,
I am here.
okay, Mr. Whipple, are you the code official for the town of Plattsburgh?
Yes.
Okay,
Address.
what's that?
Address.
Okay, yeah, why don't you I need to have you state your name and your address for the court reporter. Thank you, Mr. Tutulio.
Christopher Whipple, 19 North Main Street, Plattsburgh, New York.
Mr. Mox, did you get that okay?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Whipple, help us out understand why this is why this isn't why you directed this applicant to go to chapter 3 when it probably could have been done. Sorry.
Actually,
I'm sorry, chapter 13 when it probably could have been done all through as an alteration level 2.
So I did not encourage chapter 13. What happened was the first set of plans that were accepted by the previous code enforcement showed no firewalls, no fire doors, really no life safety features. And he was removing the second form of egress out of 12 and 16. And when I went over and talked to the GC, he had told me that that there are no fire doors. There's no plan for fire doors. So I reached out to Mr. Costanza and I said the plans don't have a path chosen. So there was no real path that he was going in as far as the plan stated. The plans were extremely vague, showed very little detail. So I said, well, maybe you should do a voluntary stop work order until we get this stuff addressed and sorted out. There was, so he said he was doing it under, he was gonna do it under chapter 13. He revised some of the plans, stating that he was doing it under chapter 13. He actually had, more than one method chosen and more than one path being taken. I told him he has to pick one path and stick with it. So he turned in multiple chapter 13s. I didn't necessarily agree with the chapter 13s. And a lot of this information he was giving me was verbal, and I told him that I needed, you know, for example, they said that there's charred floor joists on 16 holding up the second floor. They said that they looked at them through a microscope. They did all this testing, everything else. I said, well, is there any lab results or is there nothing? There was no paperwork to back any of that up. So he continued to go down to chapter 13, and it was apparent that we just couldn't agree on the scoring. So that's when we decided to bring in the third party. So back July of last year is when I got involved in this and started looking it over. The permit was issued in error. The previous code enforcement didn't have much of any experience. And then I didn't revoke the permit until after T.Y. Lynn's review confirmed that it doesn't pass chapter 13. As far as the work area method, and for starters, I don't necessarily agree with the percentage. I mean, the plans that you received, on the demo plans, it doesn't show the stairs being removed, for starters. The plans that T.Y. Lynn, Larson, and myself reviewed are quite a bit different from what was sent to you. Larson, so anyway, on the plans that you were sent, it shows 16 second floor being vacant. How was it worded here? Vacant, gutted, subfloor only. I would say that that's more of a 100% work area on the second floor of 16. And visiting the buildings and going into these floors, the work area percentage, I mean, we really haven't discussed it because he chose the chapter 13 path and that was the path that he went down. And if we went with the work area method, I'm not 100% sure how we would go about calculating that, because there is walls being put up, there's walls being taken down. There's several things. So did I answer your question about the chapter 13?
Yeah, I think so.
It was chosen by the applicant. I did not choose it. He said that he's been redoing buildings for 20 some years using chapter 13, and that's the way that that's the path that he chose, and that's the way we were going.
Okay. Before before Mr. Whipple leaves, let me ask the board if you have any questions. Mr. Anderleyer, do you have any questions for the code enforcement official?
Not at the moment. I'm thinking.
Mr. Darlock?
Yes, Mr. Whipple, can you just kind of briefly overview what you disagree with the chapter 13 review that they provided?
As far as the LMC review,
Yes.
so there's a few things. One, LMC is not a third-party reviewer. She was not hired by the town of Prattsburg. So in our eyes, she's not a third-party reviewer and really shouldn't be shown as one. However, so there's a few things that, and I didn't go through every little detail in the plans or in the LMC report. But there are a few points that I did want to point out. Let's see here. So she said that Larson recommended or required plumbing plans, and she made the comment that there was no new fixtures added and no additional loads. And this is one of the things where I mentioned you have a different set of plans than we do. So the plans that we reviewed show no existing laundry. And it, shows the top of 16 being vacant. And the plans that you have show laundry in the demo plan and in the work plan, indicating that there was existing laundry. So obviously the plans that we saw, there was an additional load. There's also mini split wall units that they are putting the condensate line into the kitchen sink drain. So that's also an additional load. So that's one of the things that was on her report I didn't agree with. Another one is she made the comment to call the corridor. Let's see here.
You have to speak up. You kind of faded there for a second.
I'm just looking for how she commented on it. She wanted to change the definition or call the corridor an access stair, which, by definition in the code book, it does meet the definition of a corridor. So changing it to just calling it something else to get a better score doesn't sit well. The other thing was the septic. She made comment that there was during the plumbing that the existing septics would be fine. There is a septic report that I sent from Grove in 2014, where he states that the septic can't handle apartments in 16. And he did not perform any other inspections on the other septics in the other buildings. 10 through 14, Superior came, pumped the tanks. They made mention that there's outgoing pipes, and they were not allowed to inspect those outgoing pipes to see where they went. The town was under the impression these were all holding tanks. The septic tank at 16 was empty when they uncovered it. The accent structural engineer, Eric C. Garnott, I called him. He did not perform a structural analysis of the building. He only did a very specific 6-point bullet list, which is in the plans. But there has been mention that he did perform a structural analysis, and after speaking with him on the phone, he said he absolutely did not. And the reason that I was requesting that was because there's large cracks in the wall. There's large cracks separating the drywall in the middle of those cracks. And there's cables going from the front to the back of the buildings. They also make mention that SHPO will not approve the recommended changes that Larson had said. I called SHPO. SHPO has no problems approving those changes. I spoke with Daniel Boggs. I spoke with Derek Rhodey. And I spoke with Robin Sedgwick. And they all said the same, that they have no problems with those changes. They do have a problem, however, with removal of the stairwells. We found during the conversation that the plan submitted to SHPO and the plan submitted to the town were also different. And didn't show removal of those stairs. So.
You're talking, are you talking about, I'm sorry, this is Mr. Parsons, are you talking about the stairs in 12 and 14?
The back of 12 and the back of 16. So yeah, so her changing the definition of the corridor walls, and then throughout her review, it kind of changes between having an hour separation, not having an hour separation, depending on, you know, which way gave them a better score. So, you know, that doesn't seem correct to me either. With Larson's third-party review, the suggested changes, if the suggested changes were made and, you know, the plans were adjusted and sent back to me, I could have reviewed them, made sure the changes were on the plans, and then there would have been no additional cost. You know, to have Larson re-review it. Because I could have reviewed the changes myself on the plans, and providing they were all there, we would have issued the permit and moved on. Another reason that I don't agree with her is the 1301.6.11. If you, oh, I'm sorry, 1301.6.13, if you follow that entire path, it indicates that the building's not allowed to have a single exit without a sprinkler system. I have the entire path written out here. I can give you all the numbers if you like. It's really a matter of the footnotes. You know, once you follow the path and then you follow the footnotes ultimately lead you all the way to 1006.3.3.5, which indicate a single exit building is not approved without a sprinkler. She makes no mention of that on her report. The 1301.6.11, it does not comply because of the single exit in 12. If the stairs are removed, and it does not, and none of the buildings have fire escapes. So again, that's under that 1301.6.11. So it doesn't meet either of the criteria that she chose. 1301.6.6, you know, she claims that it has protected openings and protected separation. It does not have protective openings on the stairwells. Let's see. What else do I got here? 1301.6.12.1. She states there are no corridors and no dead ends. There is a corridor between 14 and 16, and there would be a dead end at the back of 12 if they remove that rear exit stair and exit door. So that's a few.
Okay, hold on, just hang on one second. Let's get Ms. Swistek, do you have any questions? Code official.
No.
Okay. I think we have some questions back for the applicant. So stand by, Mr. Whipple. May come back to you shortly. So have you submitted the drawings that are presented in this package as the official drawings to the code enforcement official?
Yes, everybody has the same drawings. The reason why, the original drawings and that were submitted 2 years ago to the town, they were submitted as well to the state's SHPO for the grant process and for the historic review as well. So there was the grant group, there was the historic status group, and there was the town building official. They all got the same drawings 2 years ago. When the historic SHPO and NPS came back and said they wanted us to change a few things, there was a revision to the drawings that was made. So there was a second set. Town and SHPO and NPS had that drawing set. When the new inspector came to the town and there was changes that were being made, like there were some things like we didn't have the firewalls notated on the original drawings. Their brick masonry wall, they built the foundation to the roof deck. I think it was necessary for the work that they're doing. So everyone has the same drawings. There's been multiple versions of the drawings that have been changed. Basically, the drawings that you have, the drawings that were made in October for the reviews, the chapter, or no, I'm sorry. In October, we made drawings for the Chapter 13 reviews, and then based on the comments from LMC Codes Chapter 13 review, we updated the drawing set to basically be compliant with her Chapter 13 review, and that is the set that you have known as.
You're on,
Hold on one second.
Yes, sir.
Just clarification. Are you removing the rear stairs?
There are no stairs being removed. I know this keeps getting brought up and said, but we are not, like the stairs that are like the physical risers and treads and runs that were originally built, they are still there in the building. They have not been removed at all.
You're going to still use it as an exit from the apartments?
They were never exits. So at least they were not exits when we bought it, when the restaurant was in operation for the past couple of decades. The stair from the 12 Main Street apartment that went down into the restaurant, went into a restaurant employee bathroom. And from the restaurant side, because of the liquor authority, basically says that you have to have your liquor completely locked up and blocked off from anyone else and any other tenant, whatever. That was boarded up, had a padlock on it. There was storage in like the closet area, and then there was the built out 2x4 framing, floor framing up above the stair opening. So from the apartment up above, you had a plywood subfloor with 2x4 framing that wasn't covered. And then below that, you had toilet paper storage and cleaning supply storage for the restaurant bar behind a door that had a padlock on it. So that's how the building has been in operation, at least as long as the restaurant has been there. I don't know how long the restaurant has been there, but I know that there was 3 different restaurants, 3 different owners, 3 different names over the past decades. So, and then the other stair was a stair that was put in the 2 owners ago. The old town supervisor owned 16 Main Street, and he wanted to make it into a antique shop. He was going to have an antique shop on the first floor, and he was going to use the second floor for storage. So he put in a stair that went from the back of the retail space up to the second floor, gutted the apartments in the second floor, and was planning to use that as basically the access for pulling his antiques from the second floor to the first floor retail shop. He never finished the construction, never got to see a boat, never put a shop in there.
Did he apply for a building permit to do the work?
He did apply for a building permit.
Was he granted a building permit?
He was, no.
He did some work to,
What he did, the work that he did is that he gutted the second floor, and then he repaired rotted floor joists on the first floor, and then put the subfloor on the first floor, he drywall and electrical on the first floor. but never put a new electrical meter or electrical service panel. So it's kind of a shell box, but it was when the previous owner that we bought it from.
Okay, so 16, second floor really is not apartments because previous owner pulled a building permit, put a second stairs to use the second floor
We
storage.
didn't pull a building permit for the change of use range, pull a building permit to do the electrical for the gutting first floor. And we have a copy of that permit somewhere.
But there's a set of stairs that are installed and he cleared out the second floor with an intent to not use it as apartments.
Right.
Okay, so. All right. I don't know that we can follow. Speaking for myself, now this changes my perspective of 16, whether it was existing apartments or not. So, okay. And it changes the story. Is the first, are the stairs going up to the second floor on 16? Do they still exist?
So the stairs in order to get to the water apartments, last occupied use on the second floor, there's a stair from Main Street.
Yep,
in front of the building to go.
You haven't done anything with that.
No.
That still exists. That's all
And
it
then,
just.
and then you could walk through the firewall, the party wall, through a door into the hallway that then is in 14 Main Street. And then go down another stair that goes back to the back alley. So the apartments, the apartments at 14 and 16 Main Street have had access
I
to
don't know.
two different stairwells, one on the front, one on the back, but with a connection through the firewall. That is the only
What are you,
opening.
are you maintaining that connection between
Yes,
what's
so that's where our new drawings have, I think, a 2-hour rated fire door in there.
okay?
I think it's at 3 hours,
Yeah,
It's supposed to be 3.
Yeah,
3
it shows
hours.
3 hours.
and that would have needed a variance.
What's that?
It would have needed a variance
Yeah,
at that door there.
yeah. So that, you know, this door is probably not done legally. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and there's many buildings on Main Street that are similar, 20 and 22 Main
We're
Street.
not, it doesn't make them legal. We can't,
Right.
yeah, we're just looking at 1614. Or excuse me, 12, yeah, the connection between 1614. Oh, boy. It's interesting here.
So, and, just to respond to what the code inspector said about a few things, the different chapter 13 reviews that we did, originally we did that chapter 13 review, that was a combined chapter 13 review, where we took the most stringent, the stringent scores from whatever occupancy class it was and applied that to the entire building. And then we did another version that was separated, where we separated out each building. And then we did another version where we separated out the occupancy. We try to do it showed in different ways, for the code inspector. None of them seem to, be in agreement with us, so we end up having these different versions. In the chapter 13 code, as I'm sure you know, but a lot of times it refers to this code. And this code meaning that it refers to chapter 13, the existing building code. So when in chapter 13, when it refers to this code, or when the existing building code refers to this code, it refers to the existing building code, and you don't have to comply with other building code sections unless it specifically states that you have to comply with those sections. And that's where there's been, some disagreement on, what sections, need to be complied from the new building code. Because work area method has certain areas of the building code that need to be complied, whereas the performance method has other areas that need to comply. And then things like, when, like with the charred joists that were mentioned, that was again, the structural engineer that came through, he took a look at the charring of the joists. It looked like there was an electrical fire from a light fixture or something in the past. He said because of the nominal dimension of the lumber and the amount of char and stuff, it didn't affect the structural capacity of it. He also looked at like the cracks in the foundation of the masonry walls and stuff. He said based on where the original roof joist pocketed into the masonry wall, it appeared that that cracking happened before they even finished the building.
Before you go, do we have a written structural report in here? Did you provide because there's some things here. Which page is that?
Yeah, back all the stuff we're talking about.
G002.
Yeah, G0023, structural and report.
Was that provided to the code enforcement official? 'Cause
Yes.
we just heard him say that the engineer said he did do a structural.
He was talking about the structural analysis of the actual, the floor joist loading. So the structural engineer came through, did a report, doing like an inspection of the building, looking at the things that were the concerns for the code inspector. The structural analysis, if you look on that same G002, you look at the structural analysis, it shows, what the code requirements are for like the snow load, the wind load, all that stuff. That is all stuff that I put on there.
And you can, because you're a design professional.
So the wind loading, the masonry gravity loading, the framing chart with all the calculations of the deflections of each framing member. That is the structural analysis that I did. The structural report was for the inspection of the building, looking at the overall, the cracks in masonry or the charred wood. There was a header that had like a crack over it, that kind of stuff.
It seemed that the structural engineer did address the walls and the cracks. Okay, all right, thank you. Just trying to get some clarification because
With the work area method, which I thought would be an easy path as well. We have shown on G001, we have shown the areas that we define as, change in, of the change in egress path. And the reconfigured space is not defined in New York State Building Code. The Building Code Council or Building Board of Building Regulations and Standards has defined reconfigured space as clarified that space is considered as reconfigured if it changes the manner in which occupants egress from the space. So if you were to, put a doorway right there, our understanding is that, circulation path, that's the reconfigured space. I think the code inspectors is that if we change the floor here now and put a brand new floor down, then that is reconfigured space because we're doing work in that area. So we don't consider like doing finishes and fixtures as work area for like a level 2 alteration. If we're calculating the amount of reconfigured space, we don't consider that to be reconfigured space. We look at it as a way it's defined, which is the only definition I can find a reconfigured space for if it changes the manner in which a space is egressed.
well, I think it's, if you putting a new floor down, but that's also part of moving some partitions around, that would be, your reconfigured space. If you're just putting a new carpet down, no, that's not reconfigured space, but anytime you're moving a wall.
Yeah, so if you have like in 16 Main Street, for instance, in first floor, it was open space with one little mechanical room in the back. And we then are putting in a bathroom. So does the entire 1,600 square feet become reconfigured space? Or just
No, just the work area, we're actually doing the work, right? Yeah, okay.
And then, with plumbing was another thing that was talked about. The plumbing, there was a, two of the tenants originally had the standalone washer, machines, and they just went into a washer box. We didn't show those on the original plans. We updated them once once the town inspector wanted to see what the calculations were for the vent stacks and the drain pipes. And, we thought that was a little odd because like a 4-inch drain pipe can have something like, 60 or 80 drain fixture units. And each drain pipe that we have has like 10 or 15. So we were like way off and we come close to capacity. But, again, we calculated it for the code inspector. But with like a condensate drain, as far as I know, does not even count as a fixture unit.
Bear with me one. My intent is, if you want questions from him, but we're gonna take, recess and do some deliberation on certain elements.
Yep, more of a answer a question. Your application appears to be requesting a variance from the existing building code 71.2, which is saying you can't make a building any less safe, sanitary. So are you saying by wanting a variance from that you are making the building less safe and less sanitary?
No, we are definitely making the building safer and more sanitary, but we don't know, we had this discussion with different people at the state and different code officials and stuff. But we weren't sure what to ask for variance when we are asking to basically to reuse existing infrastructure. So if we want to reuse existing infrastructure and the code official wants us to upgrade that infrastructure, like the septic system, for instance. Sure. You want to use the existing, there's supposed to be a municipal system installed in 2025, last I heard. So we want to use the existing until then. There was a previous report that someone wanted to put a pizza restaurant in there. And an engineer said, well, your existing system does not, work for a pizza restaurant. Pizza restaurant would have been a change of use, in which case then you'd have to use, because they're going to change their use, you'd have to upgrade to whatever the building code is current. If you're keeping the existing, then I think the existing occupancy class, then my understanding is that you can use the existing infrastructure. You have to maintain it, it has to be working condition. So the report from Grove Engineering was based on changing the occupancy to a pizza restaurant, in which case the existing septic system did not comply with current code, in which case then it would have to be upgraded. So like with wanting us to reuse the existing septic system, for instance, reuse the existing drain pipes, existing vent stacks, for to basically get approval for that, to be able to use that. We thought that section of the building code, a variance for that would be the way to do that.
Just personally, that makes me a little uncomfortable giving a variance to that, particularly because we're interacting with multiple agencies that have regulations, whether Department of Health, DEC, that all have, and when you look in the plumbing code in New York State, 7012, 7017, they give the prescriptive methods of how you satisfy, including meeting local health department regulations. So there's a measure where if there's not a public system available, you have to meet the private system requirements. And we don't regulate that at state level, really. There's Department of Health rules that kind of point you in a direction for residential on-site treatment systems. There's DEC rules for intermediate size systems. I work as a municipal engineer, and I, as a municipal engineer, have to handle these discovered systems. I have one right now I'm regulating that was discovered. They tied into an old trailer septic system, but it's a change of occupancy that they did, and we're having to load test it, inspect it, dig it up, make sure everything looks good, and try to evaluate what's there. But asking for a variance to that section, I don't think we can give a variance to when we're making it less safe or less sanitary. Those are the two kind of criteria in there, and I don't think we can entertain that.
We're not making it less safe or less sanitary.
So you're asking for a variance from it, and so the variance request
allow us to make it less safe. I see what you're saying.
right.
Let me jump over to, do you have questions for them?
Just quickly, can you just talk about very quickly the existing systems, septic systems? It sounds like they're all holding tanks.
Yeah.
Is that consistent with the rest of the buildings in the neighborhood, or is there?
Yeah, so all of the Main Street buildings, they all have septic tanks at the rear of the buildings. They're planned now to put a municipal sewer line down there that they can all tie into. But all of them, there's no room for leach fields, so they all have tanks. My understanding that from the company that pumps them, they said that there's baffles on them, and that's standard for tanks. They have some sort of baffle on it. I don't know exactly how they work. But there's different tanks. We've had them at 10 Main Street, 12 and 14. They've been pumped. They're pumped regularly, and they've always said they're in good condition. The one at 16, because it's been vacant for a while, but there's no, it was empty when we had them inspect and pump it. So we haven't done anything to that, obviously, before we had, and we would have to, test it, make sure it works. But, we want to avoid, if possible, putting in brand new septic tanks, which then would be, useless a year from now when this whole system comes in.
I think, let me ask Ms. Swistick if she's got any questions. I'm gonna come back to your subject.
For the two buildings that you're combining, have you thought of re-subdivision to make that one building?
12, 14, 16 making it.
Yeah, so I think 12, 14, and 16 is part of historic documents. The Historic Society was built as one building, back in whatever, and all the row buildings on the street had basically a party wall that went through every 20 to 24 feet. But I think this at 12 to 16 was made as one building. It was then divided
12 to what?
12 to 16 with one building as far as like historic documents from 90, like an old historic photograph. It looks like it's the same, has the same parapet line running across, has the same street facade. So, that was subdivided at some point, 1910-ish, give or take, into two different tax levy parcels. And the one that was the combined one, the 12 to 14, the restaurant and bar, one side of it is the dining room and the other side is the bar space. And there's multiple openings in there. So that's considered to be one space now, which is why 12 to 14 doesn't have the fire partitions as in order to separate those out, would have the fire partitions or separate them out as separate fences.
16 is taller.
No, they're all the same. 12 to 16 is all the same height.
Yeah, I flipped the picture. I think 16 was probably an addition. That was my guess. But the door penetration,
Yeah, so,
that's where we're trying to figure out is like the door penetration doesn't.
Well, it
Whenever-
shows one there in the demo plan now.
Right.
Second.
Yeah, but are they,
right,
I mean, a party wall has to be complete with no
right.
penetration.
Legal.
So legally, to have that door there, you would have to do a variance or make those one
So it's one
building,
big building.
Right.
one parcel.
That was kind of one of the questions I was going to talk about, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Let me just mention the septic system. You didn't provide an engineering report on your septic systems. You didn't have a civil engineer go inspect your septic systems. You just had
No, we just had a
service guy inspect it.
We just had a service person do that.
It just, the questions about additional pipes coming and leaving a tank, they typically, if you find those, you're supposed to inspect them. But I know from county level health departments, they want to know where everything's coming from. So whether it has anything to do with this code, or this is dealing with sanitary code, it probably needs an engineering report. Just
My understanding is from the person that looked at it, that it's not pipes that leave, it's baffles that are on the tank. So they're built into the tank. There's like a baffle or something.
But baffles will be introduced to help with grit settling
Yeah.
and solids. So that normally in a typical septic tank, you have multi-chambers so that your solids, your fats, your oils, grease will stay in the first chamber. And then your effluence moves out to be processed, but it allows it not to contaminate the entire tank. So you kind of have a triage area, we'll call it, in the front side. For a traditional tank that is leaving, it's like a pre-treatment. For a cesspool, which is or just a tank to hold, the baffles are pointless. So I mean, it's very possible they could have used a regular tank and plugged, but it's a little unusual, but not uncommon.
hence the reason if you'd had an engineering report and looking at both of them, the engineer says, yep, they're perfectly fine and functional. Not the guy that pumps it out and looks and sticks his head in there or whatever. It's an engineer. If you'd had, I think it would probably be easier for us to even address this, right?
And I think the code requires, you're not allowed to connect multiple effluent lines into a single system. And so if these are separate parcels, if they're all,
systems.
there should be separate tanks for each building. So if you're gonna keep your current configuration, it anticipates some sort of variance on that. that if if these really are functioning one owner, but they're all using one tank, well, that's another variance potentially that's needed, that we don't know now, you know?
And going back on the variance on the fire protection, I mean, if this is just alteration level 2, particularly 12 and 14, assuming they not part of 16, you wouldn't have to put a sprinkler system in. It's just doing what you had to do. There's clear language, chapter 8, fire protection, you would be exempt from that because you don't have the services to do it. So hence I keep pointing back to, because it's what you asked for is variance on the sprinkler. I'm saying, did you really configure, do anything to the space enough that would make this so it would trigger the sprinkler system? Again, if I look through chapter 8, that's why I asked about the percentages. That's where it's like, why are we in chapter 8?
I think, you know, I've been an architect for 25 years. Plenty of historic building, that kind of stuff. I look at this as kind of a pretty simple projects. We were moving through construction as a pretty simple projects. And then it got to be, you know, the amount of documentation and board pages and stuff. But is snowballed into something that's way more complex than it should be for the amount of work that's being done.
Hence goes back to our original question, why you were in chapter 13, because we, at least how I read 12 and 14, with the exception of this penetration to the wall, look like to be an alteration level 2.
I think we're in chapter 14 because.
13.
In 13 because the town and I disagree on what is bigger space as far as that definition.
That's easy solved. Okay. But I think this door threw a wrinkle to us, and that's what we're gonna have. We need to take a little time to do some deliberation about what stuff. But speaking for myself, your first variance on septic system, I'm not gonna, I don't think I can go there without seeing an engineering report, just saying things are right. Because even if we grant it, the health department could just overrule us anyway. So I think to cover, you know, so you're covered, so whatever we give you, we feel that we're not making the situation worse. 16, clearly you're adding more facilities than it's being used for. We don't know that septic system as far as, you know, its capacity, on fixtures, size of it. Nothing's been provided in the record to give us an indication. So that's why, you know, having an engineer just look at each system would be helpful for us to make that a determination in favor of what you're asking for. Going back to the sprinkler system again, that's where I'm kind of like, why are we even in chapter 13? Why can't we do this through chapter 8 if there is as an alteration level 2?
And the wrong,
What's that?
wrong person to ask that too.
No, you're a good person to ask this to. I got 2 of them here. So anyways, that's where we're at. So let us take a little bit of time. We're going to go into recess for about 10 minutes. Yeah, about 10 minutes. We just have to talk about where we want to go with this. And we'll come back. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go off to the record. We'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Barrington, do you got one?
We are.
Okay, thank you, everybody. After some deliberation, we actually have a decision, and I'm going to open the floor for a motion.
I have a motion.
Mr. Indleiter has a motion.
This petition pertains to an appeal of a code enforcement official's determination regarding compliance with Chapter 13 of the 2020 existing building code in New York State for a level 1 and level 2 alteration of 3 buildings, 2 stories above grade plane, approximately 8,460 square feet and gross floor area located at 12, 14, and 16 Main Street, Plattsburgh, New York, 14873, County of Steuben, New York State. The petitioner is appealing the determination of a code enforcement official regarding the applicability of Title 19 NYCRR Part 1227, Existing Code of New York State, Section 105.2.5, which states, the authority having jurisdiction is authorized to suspend or revoke a building permit wherever the building permit is issued in error, or on the basis of incorrect, inaccurate, or incomplete information, or in violation of any provision of this code, any other provision of the Uniform Code, the Energy Code, or any other applicable law. Any such suspension or revocation shall be in writing, signed by the building official or by his or her designated agent. Petitioner believes that the current design drawings are compliant with Chapter 13 of the 2020 existing building code of New York State and does not want to pay the town of Plattsburgh for a third-party reviewer to review the most up-to-date design drawings. Or, if the appeal fails, the petitioner is seeking relief from Title 19 NYCRR Part 1227, existing building code in New York State, Section 701.2, which states, an existing building or portion thereof shall not be altered such that the building becomes less safe than its existing condition. The petitioner seeks relief from the town's request to have an engineer size and design new septic systems for the subject buildings because the buildings intend on utilizing the new municipal wastewater system when it becomes available in 2025. In addition, Title 19 NYCRR Part 1227 existing building code in New York State, Table 805.3.1.2, Part 2, footnote C, which states quick response sprinkler protection is required in all non-residential occupancies located below Group R and for all 3-story Type 5 buildings. Dry pipe sprinkler protection with standard response sprinklers is only permitted in unheated spaces subject to freezing temperatures. The petitioner seeks relief from the requirement for non-sprinkler single exit Group R2 occupancies to have quick response sprinkler systems installed in all non-residential occupancies located below the single exit Group R occupancies. The board finds the following findings of fact. 1. Petition pertains to the appeal of a code enforcement official's determination that the level 2 alterations do not comply with the applicable provisions of Chapter 13 of the 2020 existing building code of New York State. 2. The previous code enforcement official of the town of Plattsburgh issued a building permit in May of 2023 for the work at the subject property. See Exhibit H. 3. In July of 2023, the town of Plattsburgh hired a new code enforcement official. That month, the new code enforcement official notified the applicant that all work was to stop and that he was pulling the permit. 4. The design documents were submitted to a third-party review in August of 2023 at the applicant's expense, and revisions were made to the design documents throughout the review. The applicant states that there were mathematical errors in the third-party review report and requested another third-party review be performed by a different firm. 5. A second third-party review was conducted in April of 2024, also at the applicant's expense, and additional revisions were made to the design documents throughout the review. The applicant states that many of the items in the second third-party review report were either already addressed in the revised design documents or were inappropriate for a project of this nature and scope. 6. The applicant refused to pay for a third-party review and hired their own reviewer, LMC Codes, in May of 2024 to review the design documents for compliance with Chapter 13 of the 2020 existing building code of New York State. Additional revisions were made to the design documents throughout her LMC Codes review. The final set of design documents dated April 30th, 2024 are included in Exhibit E. 7. LMC's Chapter 13 report indicates that the final set of design documents dated April 30th, 2024 are compliant with Chapter 13 of the 2020 existing building code of New York State. See Exhibit L. 8. The Department of State staff have reviewed Exhibits E and L and have determined that LMC's Chapter 13 report appears valid. See Staff Summary 240279 T. Dutilio. 9. The final set of design documents dated April 30th, 2024 were submitted to the town on June 11th, 2024 for review and approval. See drawings dated 4/30/24 submission to CEO. 10. The town has an agreement in place where Chapter 13 of the 2020 existing building code of New York State reviews are performed by a third-party entity selected by the town and paid for by the applicant. The applicant refuses to pay for a third-party review. 11. If the appeal fails, the petitioner has requested that a variance be granted from Section 701.2 of the 2020 existing building code of New York State for the existing septic system and footnote C of Table 805.3.12 of 2020 existing building code of New York State for the occupancies below the second floor single exit dwelling units with no sprinklers. 12. Title 19 NYCRR, Section 1205.4C states that in cases before a regional board of review on appeal, the board may fashion suitable remedies so as to do justice among the parties, including but not limited to, 1, where an order of determination has been made, sustaining, reversing, or modifying in whole or in part such an order or determination. Where an order or determination has not been made within a reasonable time, making such order or determination or directing that any order, determinations, permits, or authorizations be issued. 13, upon reviewing the provided exhibits, buildings 12 through 14 and 16 Main Street function as a single building with penetrations through walls separating building 14 and 16 Main Street. 14, the local code official has been contacted in this matter and does not support the granting of a variance under Title 19 NYCRR Part 1205. In view of the above findings, the board sustains the appeal for the petitioner and therefore reverses the determination of the code enforcement official that the third-party review by LMC codes is an acceptable evaluation for the purposes of compliance with the existing building code of New York State. The granting of this appeal will not substantially adversely affect the Uniform Code's provisions for health, safety, and security. The board also determines that insufficient evidence has been provided to warrant a variance, and the granting of a variance would substantially adversely affect the Uniform Code's provisions for health, safety, and security. So wherefore it is determined that the application appealing the determination of a code enforcement official is granted, and a variance from 19 NYCRR Part 1227, Section 701.2 of the existing 2020 existing building code of New York State for the existing septic system is denied with the following conditions. 1, structures 12 through 14 and 16 be treated as one building for the purposes of compliance with the codes. And 2, that all other aspects of this building construction be in compliance with the applicable codes, rules, and regulations. I so move.
I have just one amendment.
Yes, sir.
Because we have 2 septic systems on this building, we can only allow one. We probably should put that in there that they can, that with the exception of the septic systems, the building will be treated as one building.
So we revise condition 1.
Yeah, with the exception of the existing septic systems.
Shall not be treated
As one building.
as one building.
We would want to create another problem. That makes sense? Okay. So we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Swistek seconds. Pull the board. Mr. Garlock.
Aye.
Ms. Swistek.
Aye.
Mr. Hinderleiter.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. 4 ayes, no nays. The appeal is granted and the variance is denied. It should be noted that this decision is limited to the specific building and application before it as contained within the petition and should not be interpreted to give implied approval of any general plans or specifications presented in support of this application. This hearing is now concluded. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Code enforcement official, Mr. Whipples, he looks like he left. Okay. All right. If you have any questions, contact Mr. DiTullio.
Okay.
Contact Mr.
I will email Tom.
Hey, Tom,
Geist.
Yes,
Mr. Whipple is raising his hand.
Oh, we can't see him.
Mr. Whipple, you can speak.
Mr. Whipple, you have a question?
I just wanted to clear up, if the town has no, plans for the septic being done or the city sewer being done by 25. The plans aren't even in the process yet, so we have no date as to when that's gonna happen. And also the septic report from engineer, Grove stated that there is a seepage pit that the septic tank from 16 discharges into. Just wanted to be sure that you were aware.
Yeah, the variance for the septic system was not granted. So they did not get a variance, so they have to comply. I would say that, speaking for myself, but also hearing from my colleagues, what was lacking here is an engineering report about the septic systems that evaluate aspects of it, whether it was fully functional and make sure all the discharges and connections were appropriate. It should be noted that we took these buildings, in our determination, 12, 14, and 16, because of the penetration through the walls between 14 and 16 is treated as, make this treated as one building. However, you do have two septic systems and they can remain as two septic systems because it's something that happened in the past and we don't know when and by who. So we left those in existence, but they do have to be compliant.
Okay, and the chapter 13 review was done on each individual building. Does that need to be redone
No, I
to
think
seek those buildings as one? Or
No, the LMS was done as treated all 3, 12, 14, and 16 together. So it doesn't have to be separated. We reviewed their documentation as. So LMS.
She has two different, she has two different tally sheets, one for 12 through 14 and one for 16.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's going to affect this at all.
Okay.
Okay.
I thank you all.
Mr.
Check.
Mr. Shank, you can contact him and he can probably give you any other consultation on regarding how the board ruled on this. If there's
Okay.
any misunderstanding. Okay, all right. Let's get on to our, thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to our next case. Okay, we are going to reopen petition number 2024-0300. And this is in the matter of Bramley Mountain Fire Tower. So at our last board hearing, we were looking for specifically more information related to the structural components of the building, to make of the structure, excuse me, the components of the structure as far as, and this is in support of the code enforcement official. And we're looking for some engineering, and I believe we have found all the information documents on the engineering's report that I speak for myself, I'm satisfied. Does any other board members have any concerns about structure report? Okay, so that is covered. I think the one piece that I don't know, Mr. Tutulio, I don't know if you sent one. Do we have a plan for how you're going to secure access to this when you're not going to be providing tours? That's the piece that said there was a plan that's going to be developed or provided. I have not seen one. So is it Mr. Nellis or who's representing Bramley?
Yes, hello, this is Glenn Nealis.
State your address, Mr. Nealis,
Yes,
again for the board reporter.
1 Courthouse Square, Suite 4, Delhi, New York, 13753. So as for the operational plan, I believe I did send a copy of that to Tom. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But as far as what the board's concern was related to, you know, what's going to go on when nobody's there. People who do hike to the top of Bramley Mountain would be able to go up the stairs of the fire tower. They would not be able to access the cab. That is similar to how the towers are operated and managed, you know, throughout the state that we're aware of. That there's no real legitimate way to lock them off that wouldn't just encourage somebody to climb over a gate anyways, and that the real safety component is in making sure that the cab is locked when there is not any of the volunteers there to make sure that it's safe up in the cab.
Okay. And the occupancy of when you're doing tours, how many people are you going to allow?
So 6 are allowed to be in the cab at any one time.
Okay.
And
Is
that's
there any limit to
predicated
how
on
many
the
people can
square
be?
footage of the cab and with the cutout to come up the stairs and the safety railings and so forth.
Okay. You sent us some pictures that were submitted with of other towers where there was a fence that was along the handrails. Are you planning to install some type of additional protection on the rails?
Yes, so hopefully if you got the latest set of revised drawings, it does show the planned fencing that will be put on the stairways for safety concerns. It's gonna be sort of like chain link, but with the holes no bigger than 4 inches.
Okay.
But as you did question from the first set of reviews about the rise and run and the open stairs, that detail is now on the plans as well. And that the variance that we would be requesting for that was incorporated into this as, through conversation with Tom. He said he had incorporated that into the overall request because that would be another variance.
Okay. You're going to close the openings or not?
To close which openings?
I'm sorry, what did you mentioned that on the rise, you were gonna do something?
Oh, that the rise and run do not meet code and that would be added to, the variances that we had requested initially in regards to toilet facilities, accessibility, and vehicle access, emergency vehicle access.
Okay. Let's see. Any questions from board? Mr. Hinterleiter?
No.
Mr. Garlock?
You had a picture of the access and the trail identified for getting up to the tower. How do you plan to really transport the materials up that road? Will it be improved at all? And then will it be, whatever you do, will it be maintained through the service life of the building?
All right, so the plan for the construction is that they would be able to use the access road. The contractor has viewed the road and didn't express any concerns that they would be able to get everything that they needed up the access road as it currently exists.
Okay, so you're not gonna make any improvements or changes?
Yeah, nothing more than what the DEP, who was the owner of the land, the underlying land there, has already made to the access roads. And I think there were new pictures submitted from our team related to the access road that might better show its condition as being, passable and reasonably passable on a year-round basis.
This is Tom Utility Department of State, 333 East Washington Street, Syracuse, New York. The information provided by New York City Department of Environmental Protection notes that's not just an access road, it's also a fire road too, so they do get fire equipment up there in case of forest fires.
Okay.
So it does take the vote smaller.
Do we need to stipulate that it should be a clear opening of at least 12 foot wide?
And they maintain it that way. But we can add that to the stipulation, and
Yeah.
I don't think the department, protections will have any issues. I do believe there is.
Mr. Graff? Mr. Graff?
Yes, Jeff Graff, New York City Department of Environmental Protection. 669 County Highway 38, Arkville, New York 12406.
Would you have any concerns if we stipulate that the doesn't have to be the road, but the opening where the road goes up through is 12 foot wide, so that, you know, trees and things keep clear so that they can drive emergency vehicles up there?
Yes, I believe we can accommodate that. I want to be clear for this board that we issued a land use permit to the county for use and occupancy of the land. And so we're dependent upon this board and the issuance of a building permit that we would need to review the revised plans for that's being submitted to this board, in addition to any revisions to plans to the permit that was issued to the county, but certainly something I believe we can accommodate.
Okay, because the 12 foot is standard like a driveway.
Emergency vehicle access road anyways.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I think that's the only question I had concern with. Anything else? Okay, we're going to take a brief recess to put this together, and then we'll be right back with you. Okay?
Great, thank you.
We go off
Off
the
the
record.
record, Mr. Moxie.
Thank you. We're out of recess, reopening petition number 2024-0300. This hearing is in the matter of Bramley Mountain Fire Tower. The board is deliberated, and I believe we have a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
With respect to the petition of Glenn Nealis of Delaware County Economic Development, petition number 2024-0300, requesting a variance to the following sections of the Uniform Code. Petition pertains to a variance seeking relief for toilet room requirements, accessibility requirements, and fire access road requirements for the reassembled Bramley Mountain Fire Watch Tower, construction 2B, 2 stories, approximately 80 feet in height, located at Bramley Mountain Hiking Trail, Town of Delhi, County of Delaware, New York State. Public notice was published in the New York State Register's June 18th, 2024 issue. Petitioner is seeking relief from 19 NY CRR Part 1225, the Fire Code of New York State, Section 503.1, where required, which states, where required, fire apparatus access road shall be provided and maintained in accordance with sections 503.1.1 through 503.1.3 and Appendix D.1. 19 NY CRR Part 1225, the Fire Code of New York, Section 503.2 specifications, which states fire apparatus access road shall be installed in the range in accordance with sections 503.2.1 through 503.2.8. Petitioner is seeking relief for a variance to construct a fire access road due to the fact that the existing access to the proposed site is via a hiking trail and is restricted in its development by access agreements and land restrictions noted in New York State law. 19 NY CRR Part 1221, the Building Code of New York, Section 2902.3, employee of public toilet access or public toilet facilities, which states, for structures and tenant spaces intended for public utilization, customers, patrons, and visitors shall be provided with public toilet facilities. Employees associated with structures and tenant spaces shall be provided with toilet facilities. The number of plumbing fixtures located within the required toilet facility shall be provided in accordance with Section 2902 for all users. Employee toilet facilities shall be either separate or combined employee and public toilet facilities. Petitioner is seeking relief for a variance to omit a toilet facility at the Bramley Mountain Summit Tower site location. The present property owners are the City of New York, and New York City Department of Environmental Protection oversees the property use and is restricted in its development by access agreement. 19 NY CRR Part 1221, the Building Code of New York, Section 1011.2, width and capacity. The required capacity of stairways shall be determined as specified in Section 1005.1, but the minimum width shall not be less than 44 inches. See section 1009.3 for accessible means of egress stairways. Exceptions: 1, stairways serving an occupant load of less than 50 shall have a width of not less than 36 inches. 19 NY CRR Part 1221, the Building Code of New York, Section 1011.5.2, riser height and tread depth. Stair riser heights shall be 7 inches maximum and 4 inches minimum. The riser height shall be measured vertically between the nosings of adjacent treads. Rectangular treads shall be 11 inches minimum, measured horizontally between the vertical planes of the foremost projection of the adjacent tread and at a right angle to the tread's nosing. 19 NY CRR Part 1221, the Building Code of New York, Section 1011.5.5.3, solid risers. Risers shall be solid. The reconstructed existing stairs are 24 inches in width with a rise greater than 7 inches, approximately 8¼ inches, and a tread less than 11 inches, approximately 8¼ inches. Risers are open as was the original design. EBC section 503.1, exception 1 states an existing stairway shall not be required to comply with the requirements of section 1011 of the Building Code of New York State, where the existing space and construction does not allow a reduction in pitch or slope. 19 NY CRR Part 1227, the existing Building Code of New York, Section 305.1, accessibility for existing buildings, which states the provisions of section 305.1 through 305.9 apply to maintenance, change of occupancy, additions, and alterations to existing buildings, including those identified as historic buildings. Petitioner is seeking relief for a variance for accessibility requirements for existing buildings, the parking lot location, the hiking trail to the mountain, summit towers location, topography, and inhibit the modification or improvement of items to meet the ADA requirements. The board makes the following findings. Subject petition pertains to relief sought to return the 1950 80-foot Aero Motor Company LS-40 fire tower erected at the summit of Bramley Mountain, access from Glen Burnie Road, Town of Delhi, County of Delaware, State of New York. 2, the structure that is the subject of the petition is a fire watch tower erected in 1950, located at the summit of Bramley Mountain in the Town of Delaware on or about approximately 1980. The tower was decommissioned, dismantled, and stored at the present time. The present owner of the tower is proposing to relocate the tower back to the summit of Bramley Mountain as a historical site. The DBSC has determined that the relocated structure meets the requirements for the EBC section 1401.1 definition of a relocated or moved building or structure. 3, the subject existing structure is properly classified for the Building Code of New York, Section 312.1, Utility and Miscellaneous Group U. Tower. The proposed use is allow the public to access the tower cabin and stairs, which is a change of occupancy to Group B Business 303.1.1, small buildings and tenant spaces. 4, the subject structure is properly classified per the Building Code Section 602.2 as Type 2B non-combustible construction. The 3-room observer's cabin, approximately 7 feet by 7 feet, for an area of 49 square feet, 2-story, 80 feet in height. 5, even if it would be possible to re-engineer the structure, the tower itself is controlled by the county through a lease, and the county would not be permitted to dramatically alter the structure of the tower to try to make it accessible. The structure is to be erected and available for the public to allow for the tower's observers to access the cabin for viewing. 6, the erection of the existing tower requires that the tower now meet the building code requirements for accessibility of the site. At the site, in the observer's cabin of the tower, toilet room requirements. 7, the petitioner contends in Exhibit 1 narrative that the access road to reach the summit of Bramley Mountain where the fire tower is planned to be located is 1.4 miles in length and is essentially a former farm logging. 8, the petitioner states in Exhibit 1 narrative that the property upon which the tower is to be placed is owned by the city of New York. Delaware County, through a land access permit, has gained access to a 1,300 square foot area at the summit of the mountain for the reconstruction of the fire tower. 9, the narrative states that the land use permit obtained for the reconstruction of the fire tower was approved for low impact uses. Per section 17-02C of the New York City rules for the issuance of a revocable land use permits defines low impact use as those uses with little or no soil, vegetation, stream, or wetland disturbances, and no sitting or impervious surfaces or structures. It would be impossible to conform to the reference code sections without disturbing soil or vegetation, as well as without creating an impervious surface as defined under the New York City watershed rules and regulations. 10, the petitioner's narrative in Exhibit 1 states that the Delhi Fire Department is already equipped to handle remote extractions through the use of their ATVs and sled equipment. Furthermore, the risk is already a current condition. The hiking trail has been in existence for a number of years, and the addition of the fire tower is highly unlikely to add to the current injury risk. 11, the petitioner states in Exhibit 2 that therefore due to this section, it is highly likely that we would be able to construct a bathroom, unlikely that would be able to construct a bathroom facility at the summit, as doing so would cause a disturbance to the land and result in the creation of an impervious surface. 12, the petitioner states in Exhibit 3 that as a wilderness hiking trail to the summit, the trail is at times a steep climb through a natural mountainside with intermittent scrambles over rock and the trail itself, and is not handicap accessible. The only alternative route is an emergency access road, which per the terms of the permit is not open to the public. There is no practical way of providing accessibility to the fire tower to meet the designated codes for fire access road. 13, the existing stairs to be reused do not conform to the building code, as the reconstructed existing stairs are 24 inches in width with a rise greater than 7 inches. The risers are open as was the original design. 14, the petitioner has provided information in Exhibits 13 and 14 that document the existing and relocated steel fire towers have been repurposed into hiking destinations to promote the wilderness and natural beauty in New York State, and promoted by New York State DEC with tower climbing events to located and climb 30 existing towers in the Adirondack and Catskill Mountains. 15, testimony and presented facts note that the granting of this variance will not substantially adversely affect the Uniform Code's provisions for health, safety, and security. 16, the local code official has been consulted in this matter and supports the granting of this variance under Part 1205. In accordance with the above findings, the board finds that in the case before it, strict compliance with the provisions of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code would entail practical difficulties and unnecessary hardship, and would create an excessive and unreasonable economic burden, would inhibit achievement of some other important public policy, and would be physically or legally impracticable. Therefore, I move that the above petition be granted with the following conditions. 1, that the opening for the access road is maintained to a minimum width of 12 feet clear, and that all other aspects of this building and construction shall be in compliance with the applicable codes, rules, and regulations. Furthermore, it should be noted that the decision of the board is limited to the specific building and application before it is contained within the petition and should not be interpreted to provide approval of any general plans or specifications presented in support of this application. I so move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. By second, poll the board. Ms. Swistek?
Aye.
Mr. Hinterleiter?
Aye.
Mr. Garlock?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 4 ayes, no nays. Petition variance is granted. Any questions?
No, this is Glenn Nealis again, same address. I'd just like to thank you for your consideration on our request, and also just say that Mr. DiTullio was great to work with and helped us through this process to a great deal.
Just a note, and this is, I don't believe the code enforcement official is online, but as part of using chapter 14 through the compliance, as far as compliance with the code for relocated buildings, you are required to maintain the building under the property maintenance code and the fire code. So the code enforcement official can do, you know, routine inspections there, and if there are any issues related to compliance with the property maintenance code or the fire code, you could be cited, and if something is you can't fix, you may have to come back to the board, but just want to make you aware.
Yep, absolutely. We're aware of that and plan to make sure it is maintained throughout.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Without any, Mr. DiTullio's question.
No, I don't. I was just saying we have to end the meeting now.
Okay. We can, so the hearing is over, and have a good week. We can go off the record.